All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 162. Sorry for no recording last week. That was not originally in the plans. To be totally honest, which I feel like I'm pretty honest on here, I just did not have it in me after the election and just wanted to give myself the week off to kind of decompress from all of that. I know I don't really talk politics on this podcast. I feel like if you follow me on any platform, you know where my morals and values lie. So, I talk about it sometimes other places, haven't really gotten into it on here, but I did want to say one thing that I think really ties into sports and has been one of the things that has been weighing on my mind over the last week as I've been just thinking through America, society at large, all of those things. Over the last couple of years, not just myself, but I think a lot of people have had some real concerns about American society in terms of people finding healthy and positive communities to be a part of. And especially when it comes to young people and especially when it comes to young men. And I think we're increasingly seeing an issue with this. And that's where I think the importance of sports comes in. And I promise, like I said, it all ties back into sports. I think that sports are one of the only healthy communities that young men have where they can learn commitment, hard work, togetherness, an understanding of other people who are different than you, just a positive environment that does not stem from hatred or blame, but really stems from a atmosphere of hard work and a commitment to other people outside of yourself. And I always have felt sports have been that. And I think, especially like I said, for young men, that's one of the only communities I feel like that they are offered to in their upbringings that give them that type of environment. And, I think now more than ever, sports serve a important role for people and men in society. So I think if you are listening to this and you have, young children, I would just highly encourage you to get them involved in sports. It doesn't even have to be, playing sports, also watching sports and just being a part of a community where you're coming together every week to do something positive together and cheer on your team and have fun doing that. I actually read some studies before and I've heard people talk about this, which I haven't been able to find them since I've read them. So I don't know like the exact statistics behind this, but have read and heard a couple things on some different podcasts about how Gen Z is actually watching live sports less than previous generations and is caring about sports less in general. They're consuming sports in a lot of ways through like TikTok and just watching kind of the highlights after a game, and more consuming just social media content about sports, but they're not really sitting together with people on Sundays as often watching an NFL game and congregating in that same exact way, which I think is not a good thing. I think caring about sports less in general is a bad thing and a negative for society. So I would encourage you to get your kids interested in that. I think it's a positive community. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you love sports yourself, so you would also like for that to be the case for your kids as well. But I just think it's something important to keep encouraging so that people just have positive communities to be a part of, so that when they are feeling down or lonely, they're turning to good things and not, things that are negative. So that's all I'm going to say on that. Just a little spiel from me. But yeah, thank you again for, just allowing me the week to not have to talk about sports. It felt very unimportant. So we are back this week and we'll get into a bunch of things. It actually kind of probably worked out nicely because I couldn't really prep for the next Browns game because we had a bye week. So didn't have, much to say there for the following week. So the timing worked out nicely, but we're going to get into a little bit of Browns this week, but I more importantly would like to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers this week. Okay, so the Cavs, obviously, one of the more incredible starts of a season that we've ever seen. They are 12-0. They have not lost a basketball game yet, which is so wild and so fun. And every game you're kind of like, is this going to be the day it happens? Like, there's no way they can keep this going, right? That's not possible. And they just find a way to keep on going. And it's been a really fun time, especially just the contrast between them and the Browns right now. And honestly, like how positive and fun the Guardian season was, the contrast between that and the Browns, it is like night and day. But I think the sports gods knew the city of Cleveland. If we were going to have to suffer through this Brown season, we needed something good. So it's been so great. Getting into some of the details of it, obviously, what the real only like major move that they made this offseason was the firing of JB Bickerstaff and bringing in Kenny Atkinson as a new head coach. And by all accounts, that is looking like a massive upgrade for this team. And, I think it's so early. There's not like clear metrics that can define, other than obviously winning games, on what Kenny is doing. That's so different than JB because the sample size is still small at this point in time, right? And JB had good stretches throughout his career. But for what has happened thus far, I think obviously his rotations are working. He's not afraid. It feels like he's not afraid to make in-game adjustments based on who has the hot hand and is not going to be stubborn. I feel like sometimes with JB, it felt like he would get a little bit stubborn and was like, this is what I have set out to do today, and I will not be changing based on new information given to me throughout the game. And Kenny's kind of like, yeah, this guy is a hot hand. This guy's tired. This rotation seems to be working. We're just going to go in that direction. He's kind of listening to the intuition of what the game is telling him, which, feels like that should be easy, but you just don't always see that with coaches. Maybe ego has a part of it. Maybe just a fear of change has a part of it, but it's good to see someone be so flexible in that position. In this last game against the Bulls, this is kind of, one example. And let me also just say, having those right rotations only work if you have like a lot of guys who are playing good basketball, and that's what they've had. It hasn't just been the core four who's been playing well. They've had guys off the bench playing well, and there have been times in previous seasons where that was not the case, which makes it much harder to find good rotations when there isn't anyone who has a hot hand at that point in time, and they've had no loss of enough people to that have had a hot hand and that they've been able to throw out there. But like I was saying, in this last game against the Bulls, late in the third quarter, he sat the core four for a significant amount of time. And I think, all of them were probably exhausted and needed some rest. It's been, all forces go to start this season. You could tell, especially in that Bulls game, that their legs were starting to get tired and that, all of this play has started to weigh on them over time. So made sense that they would be exhausted, but I think he found the perfect time to give them some rest, and then had a lineup of Ty Jerome, Merrill, LeVert, Wade, and George Niang, who were fantastic and were able to kind of slowly chop away at the deficit that the team had. And then as we get into the fourth quarter, the core four were able to just come in with so much more energy at that point and finish it out. And it was just a really beautiful example of like a full team win. And I think that's something that Kenny has been consistently doing, is kind of looking at those things and making sure he's making decisions at the right times on who should be out there on the floor. In terms of actual players, there's a couple guys I just want to touch on a little bit. Ty Jerome, first of all, I believe I've mentioned him in another episode already. I haven't talked a ton of Cavs on here, but I think early on I was like, yeah, he's kind of been showing up, and that has not slowed down by any means. He's been averaging 10.2 points per game on just 16 and a half minutes per game. He has just been consistently a heavy contributor, and going back to Kenny being so smart, it's like when Ty is doing that well, he's not turning away from it and being like, well, this is the kind of minutes that we would expect from him, and this is the rotations that we usually have him in, it's like, oh no, he has the hot hand, keep him out there, give him more minutes, give him more time, give him more play with the rotations that are working. And so that's been really cool to see, and it's just going to be so beneficial to have a backup point guard of that caliber, especially when you're talking postseason. And it felt like so many times in different parts of the postseason for the Cavs when the core four was not on the court, just everything fell apart. And if you can have a guy like Ty Jerome who's going to be able to keep that energy up, be able to facilitate but also be a scorer, that's going to be so exciting for this team and will help them hopefully go farther in the playoffs. Another guy I want to talk about, Darius Garland. I think I also mentioned this in another episode, but it's amazing what Darius and this team can do when he is healthy enough for a significant amount of time. He's dealt with so many fluke injuries. The poor guy has it was like the jaw, the eye, just these weird, strange injuries. And it's so good to see him have this moment and just be able to remind everyone the type of basketball player that he is. I think the other players have been talking about this. They're like, this is who Darius has always been. You guys just forgot. And I got to be honest, towards the end of last season, it wasn't necessarily that I didn't like Darius or didn't think he was a good basketball player. I was just like, is this group of players going to be able to work together? It doesn't seem like the four of them are going to be able to make it deep enough. I think I should have had more patience with that thought, and that, hey, Darius has dealt with these injuries that haven't allowed him to, keep up his conditioning throughout the season, haven't allowed him to have chemistry with his teammates. And we know that when he has had that kind of time, he's been an all-star level player. So it is so nice to be able to see him play like this consistently again, and that makes me really happy for him. Another thing with Darius is that he has been one of the most clutch players, not just on the Cavs, but in the entire NBA this season. And I want to read this stat to you that I saw on the internet about Darius this season. So the NBA defines clutch situations as any game where the point differential is between 5 points with under 5 minutes left to play. So that is the kind of guardrails that we're working under with Darius statistics. Darius has been in this spot 4 times this season for a grand total of those 4 games of 18 minutes. So during those 18 minutes, he has scored 24 points, 9 from 12 from the field, 3 of 5 deep from 3, and his 24 points in that period of time are the 7th most in the league, while being the only player within the top 10 that has played less than 20 clutch minutes. So that's pretty impressive that, with that small amount of time, the clutch level of Darius Garland has been at another level. He is showing up when it matters most, down the stretch in games, and I'm so happy for him and hope that is going to continue. Last guy I want to talk about, not that everyone on this team doesn't deserve their shine, and they will continue to get their shine, but just in terms of this conversation, the last guy I want to talk about is Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, since he has been in Cleveland, has played at a high level, has been in the conversation of top 10 players in the league throughout his time in Cleveland. But I think what I have just noticed even more from him this season is his leadership and how much I think that has meant to this team. He is constantly hyping up his teammates, and I feel like that really sets the tone for everyone else and how they interact with each other. I do think it starts with Donovan in a lot of ways. He's more vocal than some of the other leaders on the team, like an Evan Mobley or a Jared Allen. I feel like Donovan and Darius are more of the, talkative, more outspoken type roles. So I feel like Donovan has taken a really important leadership role on this team. I just think all the guys feed off of it and just want to win games regardless of who is hitting shots. There's one comment I specifically remember from Donovan in one of those post-game interviews with Serena on the court afterwards, where she's asking him about some big shot he made towards the end of the game. I can't remember specifically which game it was. And he didn't even want to take credit for the moment. He immediately was like, I wouldn't have even been able to take that shot if Isaiah hadn't been hustling to get a rebound and throwing his body out there and just saying he wouldn't have been able to score without that. And I just think that's such a good sign of a great leader and a great team. And it makes everyone else play more selfless basketball, where it isn't about how many minutes am I getting tonight? How many shots am I getting tonight? Am I hitting the stats that I want to be hitting? It's just like, we just want to win basketball games, and whoever's going to get that done, we want you to get that done, and we're all going to contribute in a different way. And it just feels like they all have that mindset, and it's so fun and so nice to watch. So very happy for that. We got the 76ers tomorrow. I'm recording this on Tuesday night, so going to be, another opportunity to continue the streak. It feels like any team can end it. Usually when teams have these streaks, it feels like it's always like a fluky bad team that ends the winning streak, but it really could be any night. So I'm hoping the fun just continues. I would love for it to keep going. But in terms of NBA history, like I want to say it's like 7th, or somewhere right around there in terms of winning streaks to start a season in NBA history. Obviously, number 1 overall was the 24-game win streak that the Warriors had back in their heyday. So the Warriors are actually pretty good again this year, though. I think I saw the NBA Power Rankings the other day. Top 1 and 2 were the Cavs and the Warriors. And I was like, what year is it? Where am I? What is happening? This doesn't feel right. And I actually think, funny enough, like OKC was up there too. And that was very reminiscent of like the Kevin Durant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook days. So I was like, all of these teams that are up there, it feels like at this point now, I guess this is like 10 years ago when those teams were, I can't believe that's around 10 years ago that these teams were just dominating the league. But that just shows you how quickly things can come back around and that you have the opportunity to rebuild. So yeah, really looking forward to just continuing to enjoy these Cavs games. Okay, so let's get into just a tiny bit of Browns talk. Obviously not much to say because we just had a bye week, so nothing interesting there, but I do feel like we as fans needed the bye week. I think the players needed the bye week. I feel like universally everyone just really, really needed a bye week. But I guess just looking forward as kind of overall goals for the rest of the season, since obviously playoffs are completely out of the question now, will not be happening, on just like what you are looking for from this team going forward. And I think the main goal, and it feels like with the way Kevin Stefanski is talking, this is also the goal that the organization has, is to evaluate the players that you currently have on this roster for future contracts, future decisions about what you're going to do moving forward with certain positions on this team. So a couple examples of that. One, I think, is DeJuan Jones. Obviously, they've made the move for him to go over to left tackle. He's done that for 2 games now. I think they're probably going to continue with that for the rest of the season. And I think it'll be really important to evaluate, do you think he can be your left tackle of the future? Because if so, I think they're ready to move on from Jedrick Wills. It feels like that's what they want to do, but I think they want to see if DeJuan is able to do it. So I think that's going to be really important looking towards the rest of the season. Another guy, Cedric Tillman. He's really shined since that Amari Cooper trade to the Bills and had just more opportunities to show up. And, I don't think they think at this point in time he's going to be their true wide receiver 1 of the future or anything like that. You have Jerry Jeudy under contract. If you really feel good about Cedric Tillman and are excited about him as a contributor moving forward, I think maybe that makes you wonder what you're going to do with Elijah Moore moving forward or some of the other receivers on this roster. So I think really getting an idea of how much you're going to be able to rely on Cedric Tillman in this offense will be important. On the defensive side, I think Mike Hall, who has not gotten to play that much this season because of his suspension, but has really shined in the moments that he has been out there in these last couple of games. And I think from him, it's not about knowing, is he a good player or not, because I feel like just based on what we're seeing, like he's going to be a part of this roster, obviously we just drafted him, so he's going to be, but in general, you feel good about him getting significant snaps out on that field. But it's more, how much can you rely on him on the defensive line so that you can think about what other pieces that you're going to need on the defense moving forward. Like, if you are going to be able to rely on him more, I think that changes what type of players you're looking for and what roles you're looking to fill on the defense. So I think that's going to be an evaluation piece as well, since they just haven't gotten to see that much of him yet. And with the pieces on offense in terms of like a Dwan Jones or a Cedric Tillman, like I mentioned, and really all of the other pieces on the offense that aren't in long-term deals at this point in time, I think it's important to continue probably playing Jameis, because I think with all of his faults, I think he gives you the best chance of evaluating those players, of evaluating someone like Cedric Tillman, of evaluating the offensive line and people like Dwan Jones. As much as I think they would like to maybe get more of a look at DTR, I don't think that helps them in terms of looking at everyone else, because I just think Jameis's veteran expertise in that way will help them get a different understanding. So just my 2 cents on that, which does seem like they're going to move forward with Jameis and only use DTR in certain packages where it makes sense. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. Also, just like a quick note on Ohio State, now that, that's all I really had to say about the Browns. But next 3 weeks are like very important for this college football season, obviously, because they're the last 3 weeks of the regular season before we get to playoffs. Ohio State ranked number 2 right now. They have Northwestern coming up here, but the following game against Indiana, who is ranked 5 at this point in time, I think is going to be a really big game in terms of, what Ohio State is going to be hopefully ranked going into the playoffs. Michigan is currently not ranked, very exciting, but that game is competitive regardless of where those teams are ranked. So I think, they're going to have to take that seriously no matter what. But really interested to see, especially that Indiana game, what the team is going to look like there, because that'll be very telling of where they're going to land in these last few weeks. Okay. So that is all I have for you guys. Thank you for listening to my little spiel at the beginning. I don't want to be preachy, but I'm just like worried about society and wanted to share some of my sports related feelings on that. But yes, if you could please leave me a review or rating on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe on the YouTube. Please subscribe on the YouTube. That means so much to me when people subscribe there, view there, leave a comment there. That means, like I said, means so much to me, more than any other platform. So please check it out there. I've been thinking lately, potentially, I don't know, I haven't decided yet, about going live during watching games on YouTube, potentially TikTok, maybe other places, just to like watch with people. Haven't quite nailed that down yet, but might do it. So just keep an eye out there. If you subscribe to the YouTube, you'll be able to see if I am going live at some point in time. So thank you guys again so much for listening. We'll be back next week to hopefully, maybe I'm still talking about that Cavs win streak going, and hopefully the Browns are able to get, a win here against a not very good Saints team that's also struggling, but we will see what happens. Again, thanks for listening, and as always, go Browns.